our companies is launching a 0% credit card to a niche community, to the Sharia compliant Muslim community. I went out and did a deep search on demographics, on profitability, looking at industry benchmarks, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It came back with a 30-page report with over 75 citations. Again, we're talking about search, but just these practical tools that are front end, retail facing, end user facing. This is not something we had 2 years ago. And so I think it's already changing the landscape, producing content. Um, so yeah, I think again, I don't see it as a wrong for waiting because things are just going to mature and cycle and mature, and that's perfectly fine. There's not a wrong or right time to get into it. I think it's already exciting because the practicality for day to day is pretty much here.
Ventures or coventures.world, where we can highlight some of our peers and be able to engage with them in different co-venture situations for profit and be able to figure out how to do that. One of those is cybersecurity, which is a big space out there, multi-trillion-dollar initiative, or at least for a lot of people. We started with a cybersecurity academy, being able to put it online so that people and clients can learn about cybersecurity and protect themselves. We also looked at security.world to be able to address certain vertical markets like the healthcare space that's much more vulnerable to cybersecurity attacks. I think it's the second or third largest attack here in the US, targeting healthcare. Why? I don't know, but that's the way it is, seems to be. Other peers that come together, Consulting Ace is offering government grants for those that qualify, commercial incentives for those that qualify, and it's probably a takeoff. At least I started to hear about it during the pandemic when the government was giving away grants. And you could still do that, but you have to know about them, you have to qualify, and of course, be able to be patient to get it. We're also working with Entrepreneurs University, and Bob Norton is here that he can speak more about that to be able to address the small, the medium, and large organizations in terms of training and getting the strategic and the tactical correct going forward. We're also working with VenOps and compliance and risk management. Their market is a healthcare space with about 1,000 rural hospitals and orthopedics. And they've created their own AI tool to be able to generate more value for their clients. We're also working with Echo.ai, Savvy.ai, that offers healthcare benefits for their employees as well as assessments, various other areas. We're also in the philanthropic area, working with Continuum Foundation with virtual solutions. In terms of blockchain is big, of course, and blockchain is the foundation for NFTs and cryptocurrencies. And that's going to continue to grow tremendously, especially with the current administration that's really boosting that and supporting that, especially with the wealth initiative that they put together. We're also working with Southeast Asia, with River.world, also with Blackbird Global Foundation in terms of a nonprofit community that offers healthcare kiosks initiatives. They're targeting the different countries, starting with Africa, and they've raised quite a bit of money, revenues from the governments when they talk about billions. Another incentives, Recycles World, and Peers on Demand, and other areas that we focus on. So my invitation is that you might consider joining our CoVentures Mastermind session that we have on a weekly basis with other peers that are interested in sharing their talents, their strategies, their connections, their funding. And overall, this is my invitation. Join our community called peersondemand.com. Join any of our free events. Today it's for entrepreneurs and speakers, tomorrow for strategic consultants, and on Friday for distribution, logistics, manufacturing. And of course, consider joining our world of co-ventures so that you can participate in our mastermind sessions. So Naima, I wonder if you might share what's a big idea going forward this coming year for you and your business, Naim?
So yeah, thank you for that. By far and wide, the clearest idea to me, and the bell kind of went off, light bulb kind of went off a few months ago, is AI. Now everybody's talking AI. It's kind of overtalked and overused. But where the light bulb has gone off to me is not so much as a fancy writer, everybody's chat GPT, okay, fix your sentence, write better emails. Okay, that's not even the tip of the iceberg. Where that's become pivotal is the automations. So, and we're seeing that now with the abundance of agents that everybody's beginning to offer. So if we can master and train and build AI agents and hire some teams where every single business flow can leverage that, including cold calling, customer service, uh, social media content, the entire sales funnel. I think that that is a clear differentiator. So right now, I am extremely fixated on trying to develop AI workflows from the top of the funnel down to the bottom of the funnel. I don't think we're quite there where it can take over the whole thing yet. There still needs to be human intervention at points, but it's certainly huge in terms of ROI. So that's really what I'm focused on. That's what's getting me excited these days.
Well, that excites me and a lot of other people too, especially the ROI part. And I think that's been my thought. How do you get a return on investment sooner than later, especially with the OpenAI and now DeepSeek and some of the other um, AI tools, LLMs that are out there? They're putting a lot of money up front and they're not making money.
Right.
There's a $500 billion initiative that's on the table to go build data centers. So, what would you say, Naeem, is the challenge to getting to the picture that you're having in terms of being able to go to top to bottom initiatives with AI? Naeem?
I think the challenge right now is there is a overwhelming amount of information. There is a arms race when it comes to this technology, and every day we're hearing about a new engine being dropped by either the Chinese or the Americans or the French even. They've gotten into it. So it's really just being bombarded. And I think where this focus needs to happen is, and I try to remind myself and my team about this, is let's not focus on the next version of whatever is coming out. Just focus on the core fundamentals, which is, can we outsource 90% of our inquiries that come into our financial advisory business? Can we outsource and automate 90% of the customer service questions that come into our logistics business? They're all the same. It doesn't matter. So if we can begin to put together workflows that are practical, they're not going to be perfect. That's okay. It really will begin to make a difference. And I think there's cutting edge companies that are already doing this, and now they're turning around and offering these as services. So
Mhm.
it's to figure out what's practical, what you need to do, step one, step two, identify those and begin to test and get going and not get overwhelmed with the crazy amount of information coming at us.
Yeah, that makes sense. What I'd like to hear is more how you plan on monetizing it at the future. But let me open it up to see if Bob or Ed or Philip have any questions, comments, thoughts for Naeem. Anybody? Especially Bob Norton's created
We'll
some
say this,
classes.
yeah, the monetizing part, I'll just jump in and say really simply, um, and again, companies are already doing this, is if you can figure out how to automate these workflows, you can easily turn around and replicate this and sell this. So if I can automate my customer service, then I can turn around and say, here's a $10,000 package and I can prove the ROI. I'll put money on the line. If I cannot reduce your customer service by 90%, I'll give it away free. I mean, it's just apparent. So as you automate your own business, you can then easily package that and offer those as services.
I agree with that. Bob, you've got some thoughts on this. Go ahead.
Yeah, I did a webinar on AI, and I've been watching it since the 1980s when the first time it was going to take over the world with expert systems. And I use it daily, and not just LLMs, but a lot of specialized tools. And I agree with what you're saying that I think we're at a pivot point and it's going to touch everything. And if you don't use it, you're going to fall behind from competition because the productivity boost is significant. I haven't built agents. I have built a custom GPT with my own configurations and information, but I certainly plan to build my own custom LLM with, the hundreds of articles and 4 books I've written, or 6 if you include the ebooks and stuff like that. So, I'm a big advocate of jumping on AI. I'll try to paste an image into the chat that kind of breaks down the problem. It's a post I was going to make, in the last few days. I haven't finished editing yet, that breaks it down to make it more manageable for companies because it's going to, be so disruptive. And it's just a model that says, there's individual tools and enabling individuals, and then there's ones that are more disruptive to the business's processes, where you're gonna chunk together or string together tools or use an API stack to build something that would be infused in a set of company processes. And then of course there's building your own AI, which is much more sophisticated and probably not for 90% of the people out there, because those are the people that are building AI products. And I think a simplification model like that is necessary, because the time frame as this unrolls will be in that order. The people will hop on the individual tools to enhance their individual productivity because it's easy, it's quick, it's cheap, right? And as they get more exposure, companies will see more opportunities, and they'll formalize and introduce those or inject them into the processes that they're using. And then ultimately they'll have a whole stack of AI tools that they're using to do bigger things. But I think that's a 5 or 10 year process, even with the acceleration of technology. Um, and so there's an opportunity to create more competitive advantage, in that 5 year window or whatever it is, to be ahead of your competitors and get a productivity boost and a quality boost. I probably use AI at this point. It's continuing to go up. I probably do 50 queries a day to AI at this point, and I can do in 2 hours what would have cost $20,000 for market research, back in 2000, because I can, basically build out all the research needed for a strategic plan or a market entry strategy, very quickly on an industry and a competitive landscape. So it's hugely impactful, and obviously in different ways for different people and positions.
What's your big idea, Bob, going forward?
Well, our big idea is to enable more entrepreneurial companies to break through the terrible statistics of building successful companies. Only 1 in 400 companies reaches a measly $10 million in sales, and 1 in 6,300 reaches 100 million in sales, which I did twice in a row with my own startups from zero revenue. And so we're trying to provide a very holistic and comprehensive set of courses on entrepreneurship. And that's just information, but we combine that and create a hybrid program with airtight management that's a combination of training, coaching, and consulting. And that allows us to give a guarantee of $10 million, that we will add $10 million to the company's valuation with a 1 year engagement, which might cost 60,000, or if you're a larger company, 120,000, $5,000 to $10,000 a month while we're implementing it. And we can do that much quicker than a full-time COO, because we bring an enormous amount of intellectual property and 600 videos in the training platform, and 40 years experience as a CEO and serial entrepreneur. and management consultant in organizational change development. And training has a very high failure rate, sometimes over 90%. Coaching has a 50+% failure rate, and it doesn't work on a whole company culture. It works on an individual well, but not as much on a culture. And of course, consulting, often they just give you a report, tell you what to do, and it has a high failure rate because of that. Because if the people knew how to execute it, they probably wouldn't have needed the consultant. They're missing expertise internally. But when you do all three of those in a holistic way, with best practices curated from 1,000 books over 40 years, we can get 100% success rate, moving the needle by a large amount for any company. And so we can really enable companies in every way needed, identify all their limiters, and make those go away. Obviously, that's not easy. This is a full year program, and you're up leveling all the managers, and that's done by dropping in 6 separate systems that create what in science you'd call a closed system that's self-correcting. So again, I could go on and on because it's very complex and comprehensive. Many of you have probably heard of EOS, the Entrepreneurial Operating System. That's kind of like Management 101, and airtight management is like graduate school for the top 5 or 10% companies that want a figure exit. So it's about 18 times more content and scope than EOS.
Well, I wonder if you might describe the ideal client that would fit for you, because you
Yeah,
address small, medium-sized, and large companies, but is there
sure.
an ideal sweet spot?
Yeah, 1 million to 30 million is where we like to go in to accelerate the business's growth. So hopefully they have product market fit. We have a whole bunch of free resources and training and paid cheap courses that you can get, and 55 courses and the 600 videos and 6 professional manager certification. And so that's for training for pre-revenue startups that we can send them to because they can't generally afford the consulting and the coaching and the more expensive program until they have some revenue flowing. But the 1 to 30 million, we are industry agnostic, and we work with everyone except nonprofits, government, and pharma. And so, everything we do is about people. It's about culture, structure, implementing Kaizen, putting a skunk work system in so they're innovating faster and cheaper and trying more things. And a lot of this, of course, is for companies that, the only way you grow fast is to be disruptive, right? So you've got to have high differentiation, and you've got to have protectability of that differentiation to bring in investors, because the smart investor is only going to invest if they know there's not going to be 100 competitors doing the exact same thing 5 years later when they want to exit. So that's why I say it's for the top companies, but we can, I believe you can make any company a 1 billion-dollar company. And I don't say that as hyperbole. I say that as literally true, because if you have a culture of innovation, a company is just a legal entity you put products and services into, right? And so if you're innovating, you're creating new products, you're creating product extensions, you're going into new markets, any company can become sustainably growing, and even at 25 to 50% compound annual growth, which means you're going to hit 32x the valuation of the business 5 years out with 50% compound annual growth, and I think it's 64x if you compounded at 100% growth rate. Which I've done all of these things, so this isn't theory. This is actual practice and history.
Let's hear from Ed Connors. Ed, are you able to talk to us and maybe share about your direction in terms of your business in the healthcare environment going forward? Ed Connors.
Yeah, so our big work, and I think our big idea is how we can use our platform and to do what Naeem mentioned earlier, right? How can we reduce the labor burden to clinical and non-clinical staff members to do to be able to reach more people more effectively and with greater outcomes? And let me put some parameters around this. currently, when somebody has a health-related social need that impacts on their health care, a community health worker has to go into do a particular assessment using one tool. Then they have to sign into the EHR to get the report, and then they've got to load it into something else. And then they go through another resource directory to get the resources that match that need. And that takes them about an hour to do that process manually for a single individual with a single need. And the probability of that information being exchanged and acted on is only occurs 15% of the time, meaning that 85% of the time, after spending an hour, you've gotten no benefit from the work. And what we've done and where we've applied AI is the ability to first localize all of the organizations in a community around the needs of a particular patient population, and then use AI one more time to reduce it further to the needs of the individual, taking that hour-long process and executing it within the framework of our platform in under 5 to 7 minutes. And by doing that, we can use AI to render more relevant resource, excuse me for coughing, more relevant resource recommendations that are more precisely matched to the pain points of the hospital and the needs of that particular individual in a much shorter time frame where they are more actionable. And now we're actually submitting an ARPA-H application in about 2 weeks' time, 2.5 weeks' time, to demonstrate how we can scale this system of innovation and impact very broadly across multiple communities.
Use of AI as well too. So what is the challenge to getting to this? Because you're opening up communities as well, Ed. What do you see going forward, the opportunity, maybe the challenge as well?
Yeah, the challenge for us has always been market awareness. We had in our space in social determinants, there was a couple big well, there was one particular company that blew up to be quite large with $1.8 billion valuation, and then collapsed and has digressed quite a bit because the product wasn't performing as well as one would like. And so the biggest challenge for us is that with, it's a David and Goliath kind of story. Everybody was aware of the big man on campus, but and they were to an extent. People are now aware that it's not performing as well, but we've always been in the backdrop and we haven't had the level of market awareness that we've needed. Product market fit is solid. The technology is solid. We've got, we could clean up everything inside of a 3 to 6 month sprint to be technically superior, but there's a little bit more capital that we need to really focus on the marketing space and get that work done. It's Heudia, HEUDIA.com. The product is accessmecare.com. We're deployed into northwestern Oklahoma, eastern Iowa, Fredericksburg, Virginia, and the surrounding counties there. And
Are you working through, HMOs and other care provider organizations, or directly with the hospitals and doctors and clinics?
Yeah, we're working predominantly with clinics, FQHCs, mental behavioral healthcare clinics, some rural health programs. We've got an ideal customer profile we've built out for hospitals, and we're working on two partnerships. One, and both of them we've signed NDAs on, but one is a partnership that'll give us access to de-identified health data on 130 million Americans from 30 health systems. And then the other one is a partnership with a very prestigious healthcare system that has a digital platform. And they have an ecosystem that includes both healthcare providers and technology solutions, and we're in the qualification phase of that to be part of their ecosystem.
With each other. Let's hear from Philip Walker. Like I said, Philip is involved in IT for over 15 years. He helped grow some of the companies. I think you had mentioned to the Inc. 5000. Philip, I wonder if you could say it better than I can about what's your big idea going forward this year, 2025, the opportunity, perhaps the challenge that you have to getting there. First, what's the big idea for your business, Philip Walker?
Well, from a big idea perspective, we've taken this rush to AI to what we consider take the steps back. As things are transforming and as things are moving, everybody tends to run to the kitchen to add their ingredients. We decided that we weren't going to do that this time, and we were going to wait until the dish was finished to figure out what that next evolution or wave is going to be. I don't think that AI has found its landing spot. I actually, had this conversation with a few other analysts a couple weeks ago about even in DeepSeek space there, that everything is still pre-baked, right? We're still typing into a web browser into an AI machine, basic, sentences and data, but it's really not really pushing or bending the AI algorithms in a point to where it's really testing the models and growing the algorithms, right? So I've instructed the team to go back. What are the technology pieces and gaps that are being ignored and missed? Identifying, what we consider the top 15 things that were, emerging but were missed that are going to be needed to enable AI later. And then we're going to invest there. And then as people go back to like, oh, it's the run back to the grocery stores. Hey, we forgot to bake this into X scenario is where we're at. So, a different approach. I spent a lot of time, late last year and this year going through analyst reviews, conversations, data points, and everything suggested that it was going to need more time in the oven than it was going to, necessarily need for production business application. To me, there's very few companies out there that are still gotten to the business application standpoint. I think Watson X is still probably the leader from a business application standpoint. I even know that OpenAI, Gemini, and other people have that sexy appeal. I still believe they're not business application ready. So that's what I've been working on. How we're going to go to market and how we're going to spin that up. It'll probably be a subdivision of one of the other corporations that we have. We've been, trying to get more thought leadership and resources on that bus, per se, through introductions, through meetings, and through events, and then just finding the people that see it, right? It's like see the avenue, because most investors want the fast money. It's, hey, do you have an AI that I can invest in? And the truth is, everybody does. It doesn't take much to build some sort of large language model and then put a name on it and put a website up, right? Like, anything, your AI might be able to build your website today. But really having IP is where I think companies are struggling, because AI is taking away for the first time intellectual property. And no one's having that conversation, right? Like no one, it's not your IP anymore. So what am I actually investing in? And, what is the true investment? And I think that that's where, no one's put a pen in it and said, hey, what am I really investing in? And I think that the market's going to figure that out here by the end of the year. They're going to pull the money out of it. There's still going to be there's going to be major consolidation, because again, a company can't have more than one AI. They just can't. If your employees are using ChatGPT and you're using Gemini to rush your data and your numbers, now you're letting 7 megabrains run different directions, And eventually, there's not going to be that hive situation. So from our standpoint, it's sit back, let it bake out, grab all the other technology pieces that are being ignored, um, really centralize and focus and specialize in those. And then, when AI is ready, or IBM decides that, they're not going to, run away from everything, and actually come down market, figure out what, that perspective looks like.
Yeah, Philip, all of what you said is true until 2 weeks ago when DeepSeek showed up on the scene, and they said we could do all of this for $6 million. Turns out that it really cost them $1 billion, but that's still a fraction of what OpenAI and some of those have invested in that. In fact, Elon Musk recently offered 100 billion or close to 100 billion to OpenAI to buy out the nonprofit portion of that. So there's big money being discussed or thrown around or considered, especially with the $500 billion data center that's going to be built. And Microsoft on their own, they're putting 100 billion, and Google's doing 100 billion. So there's big money bandled around. But if you could have a youngster or DeepSeek come along, then it says we could move faster. So I'm wondering what your thoughts along these lines might be, if that would shift or change your strategies, Philip.
No. And then I guess I could send you the article for the interview that I did on DeepSeek. So what DeepSeek did was they used the other models and they created micro models within a large language model. So by doing that, essentially they created sprints, micro sprints within an AI. Instead of building a mega AI, which everybody else is doing, they brought in all the other pieces. So they were able to accelerate close to the frontier. And they were able to do it with a little bit of money. And that put them on the map. That's going to attract major investments, and that's going to pull a lot of data. Now, the issue is, as OpenAI has pulled out, you basically used our model. Perplexity is saying, hey, you used our model. Gemini is saying you're using our open source information, and you just basically copied it. And it's true. The challenge is that the money that DeepSeek is running at, that everybody is looking at, there is no IP in DeepSeek, right? They're not investing in anything that you consider from a business application standpoint. No one's going to roll DeepSeek out on a B2B level inside their company and import their company data into it. Not until it gets rebranded, acquired a couple times, and go through it. It's not going to get pushed to the limit. So I agree that there's 100 millions and you see the numbers are flying off the board. Well, the truth is we don't have the infrastructure for AI. Microsoft, Google, and all of them have figured that out. We don't, not from a worldwide standpoint. We don't have internet that can support AI. Hence why quantum computing and 5G, 6G are being pushed forward. Hence my point about the places that there has to be more of an empowerment for it. There are no devices out there that are really AI enabled. Now we're talking form factors, cell phones, iPads, computers. They have really a third of AI power in them. So all these gaps still need to get filled. And that's where I'm pointing out that, yes, DeepSeek, hot, sexy, it shot out of a meteor, caught everybody's attention. It became the buzzword. There is no IP, intangible IP to invest into. Data centers that are being built, are retrofitted. The equipment that's going in is not touching the common market. Again, that's not IP. It's infrastructure, but it's not IP. It's not something that is, that's going to go very long. And again, what are you building a business on? Are you building it in 3 months exits? Are you building it 5 months exits? Or are you disrupting for 10 years? And that's kind of where do you want to pick? I still got 20 years left, right? So for me, I'm looking at 7-10 year plans, right? Like I'm not selling anything, but there's no exit for me right now, right? Like, I can't even see it. So, I may be in a different position than most.
Philip, let me comment if I can, and confront a couple of things. First off, what you said is the conversation isn't happening is just not true at all. There are hundreds of lawsuits now against the various AI companies, and so that conversation is happening inside of corporations in a big way. Obviously, they're trying to protect their own IP and not feed it and do what they did with Google, which is give all their information away and be the product by having, AI absorb all their internal confidential information. And there are ways around that, both with local LLMs and with certain subscriptions to protect the IP. But the New York Times is suing, Indian news organizations are suing. I tried to paste the list of these in the chat, but it was way too big to fit. It wouldn't let me post something that was 2,500 words, just listing the lawsuits. And I'm sure it's not comprehensive. It was actually a chat GPT search that, I did in 2 seconds to come back with that list. So that conversation, is happening. And I think it's going to take 5 years for this to be figured out in any reasonable way because it is a new problem. Typically, copyright is not violated if you take someone's material and edit it and change it significantly. And the fair use policies might have to expand here in what's legal to do to integrate someone else's ideas and property because you cannot patent or copyright an idea. You can only copyright an exact implementation of ideas in words, right? And so if you're putting your stuff out there on the internet, you put it in the public domain and just stamping it with a copyright only protects that exact form. It doesn't protect all the ideas and sentences. And also I'll throw out the idea that I've thrown out a couple of times on this forum. There is no intelligence in AI yet. And when you use the proper definition of intelligence, which is creativity and solving problems, or in the words of Einstein, imagination, by definition, an LLM can't do that. An LLM is just an all knowing database of what people have done before and sentences, and it's putting it in a blender and mixing it up in a way that looks new and original. But as you pointed out, it's just all stolen from someone else, right? It's just scraped from the internet and trained. Um, and I looked into the deep seek situation, and yeah, the distilling and the leveraging, and some would call it the theft of OpenAI and other things is what allowed DeepSeek to create this cheaper thing. But of course, you can't believe anything that comes from China. I mean, they're in the business of lying to the international community and stealing IP. I don't know if you saw the documentary, The China Hustle, but it basically says the government encourages theft of intellectual property and financial fraud by Chinese companies to bring US dollars into China.
So if I can chime in as well on that. So I do think that the scaling at the enterprise level and the maturity obviously is not there, as you're saying, Philip. However, the practicality of it is that technology is already emerging. There is not a single enterprise platform that does not have some component of AI in there. Google search right at the top has AI. Salesforce, Microsoft with Copilot, et cetera, et cetera. So it's that tech is already bleeding well into enterprise and small business. And now it's getting to a point where it's becoming very practical. Robert, you just mentioned, hey, you check GPT. Well, everybody's doing that now. So that tool is here. The picture I have on my profile, that's an AI picture. And I was able to fool my wife for about half a second with that picture. But most people, when they look at it, they can't tell. Um, one of our companies is launching a 0% credit card to a niche community, to the Sharia compliant Muslim community. I went out and did a deep search on demographics, on profitability, looking at industry benchmarks, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. it came back with a 30-page report with over 75 citations. Again, we're talking about search, but just these practical tools that are front end, retail facing, end user facing. This is not something we had 2 years ago. And so I think it's already changing the landscape, producing content. So yeah, I think again, I don't see it as a wrong for waiting because things are just going to mature and cycle and mature, and that's perfectly fine. There's not a wrong or right time to get into it. I think it's already exciting because the practicality for day to day is pretty much here.
Yeah, Naeem, to add to that, the LinkedIn article that I just put a post into in the chat answers this exact question. It's basically looking at sort of the crossing the chasm, Joffrey Moore adoption curve of AI and breaking it down into three phases because the off-the-shelf ones are easy for an individual to use on their own without having organizational change management or process management change internally. So they're really, anyone can adopt it and get help with it right away, which is, why kids are cheating in school and making papers and everything else, right? Out of AI and putting their name on them. The second phase, is more complex and it requires coordination within a company and a department. And that's going to take 3, 5, maybe even 10 years for a lot of companies to adopt because of inertia. If you're familiar with the Joffrey Moore adoption model, the early adopters that jump in when things are risky and new is a tiny fraction. I think the number he uses is maybe 8% or 10% of the population. And then there's the ones that talk to them and take a little more risk. And then there's it's a bell curve, right? The major part of the bell curve are the people that waited 5 years to leave AT&T and go to, a phone vendor that was, half the price, right? Because they didn't want to take any risk. And then the laggards, as he calls them, are the ones that adopt last 10 years after the technology is proven and being used by everyone else. So I think that's just another technology adoption curve. And the question really is, how much will it be compressed? And because AI is kind of like talking about the internet, it's going to touch everything. Maybe even blockchain, you can argue, is going to touch everything on some level. You can't have a conversation about it without getting specific about what application in what company and what process, because there's literally a matrix of thousands upon thousands of applications of AI. So, we're not going to solve it, but I think everyone here should look at the LinkedIn article I posted because it sort of lays out the three types of AI adoption that will be fast, medium, and long.
Yeah, thanks, Bob. I think there is, to Naeem's question, is there a right or wrong time to get in? There's only a right time. Those that do it now, and I think a lot of
The right
companies are
time is
stepping
now.
in.
There's
Yeah.
no question the right time is now, because if you're not doing it, your competitor is going to have a cost advantage or a quality advantage. But that's only for phase one. That's only for the easy to use off the shelf tools for the individual, as opposed to disrupting corporate processes. So that's my take on it, Rocky.